is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215. It's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt, and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom, Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Well, g'day, folks. How are you tonight? I hope you're getting along for your Monday. It's been a bit of a busy weekend for me over the last couple of days. Sorry, I'm just trying to clean something off these glasses. It's making it very difficult to see through. Yeah, after a big drive coming back from Singleton for the great Friday night that we had there at my place in Singleton. Wonderful, wonderful evening. Hello to everybody there, including Josie, who's probably not watching, but I don't know. I know her mum is. Hi, Em. We had a great night, and Merry Christmas to you guys. I hope you have a lovely time over the next couple of days and weeks ahead. I'm sure you're going to love it. Some wonderful folks there in Singleton, not the least of which is, of course, Cherie the boss. God, we love her, and what a dynamo she is. Thank her for all the work that she does for us. And for me personally, right across Voice of Freedom, it'd be very difficult to do that without her. Just going to say hello to a few people. Neville, g'day, mate. Starseed's in the building. You'll get one probably tomorrow. Melissa, hello, darling. Glad to see you're in. Aussie Sue's back in tonight. Bulls Nutsos. Love that one. Scotty T, I saw this. Fitz is... might have something to say about this too. Be a question. In fact, I'll bring him in right now. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas and all those good things, my friend Fitz.
Good evening, Carl. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm just finished off chewing an apple. I'm just rushing, trying to eat and work at the same time, so I apologize about that.
That's all right. You've just walked in the door. I'll give you a little bit of breathing time. But this is an interesting thing from Scott here. Looks like New South Wales police are going to define sovereign citizens as domestic terrorists. That could be an interesting wrinkle in proceedings.
I don't know if you guys remember, we did a show on that not long ago where showed you evidence of what it's like when you confront these so-called police constables with actually a challenge to their authority. And you would have saw how the first thing he said was, so are you a sovereign citizen? And then you would have heard me explain that actually means domestic terrorist in their code. So this is actually right in the pocket of how they've been running it. They're just now putting it out in public that's what they've meant. It means the whole time. So now they're not even hiding what it's meant for them.
Yep, fair point. Just having a bit of a scan through. Hi, Paul, Dave, Elaine's in again tonight. Peter, how you going, mate? Galactic Larrikins are in the house. They always address you, Fitz. They are big fans of yours. You know that, don't you?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't see that because I was rushing off my feet. But yes, g'day to the Galactic Larrikins. I always do enjoy seeing you guys in the chat. So welcome,
are you
guys.
Planning on calling? Are you calling them out again this week? Or
I bet you bet I am. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I guess without further ado, we should make an attempt at getting into it here. So let me try and share my screen, and we will get to our PowerPoint to bring up life, the universe, and everything. There you go.
Just want to say tonight's going to be longer than what I'd like. I grappled with trying to split it up, but because everything connects in with everything, I don't know if I can. So, guys, it is going to be longer than what we might like, yet the detail is quite important. At the same time, if any of this is too confronting for you, because I imagine it's going to be confronting for a lot of people, especially if they hold specific beliefs, it's going to trigger a lot of stuff. Just ask yourself, am I ready to absorb this information? And it's okay if you're not. Yet there might be some other people that are willing and ready to absorb this information. So, just step away. If it's too extreme, it's too much too soon, you're not ready to actually expand into that space, give yourself a breath and just step away, and just leave it for others who are willing to and have that space to go step into there and explore.
All right. And do it then. Truth and law. Truth and law are one and the same. Neither conforms to privately either held biases or beliefs, nor do they discriminate nor favour. The neutrality of truth law is the unique property that gives it legitimate authority, along with the purity derived from being impervious to manipulation and corruption by any force of nature, nor can it be transcended.
So basically what is being said there is a lot of people that I've come to experience do not connect the similarities between certain words. And so anything that's law has to have something permanent attached to it, just like truth does. So they're really one in the same. If we can understand that as our foundation of knowledge, then we can start making distinctions between what people are calling laws as to what actual laws are. But it's really important that we understand what that actually means. You know, what it means if something's impervious to manipulation. You know, can you manipulate the truth? You can manipulate someone's understanding of what they call truth, but can you manipulate the truth itself, right? So is that above any force that we can put on it to make it change? And if it is above that, then that makes it a truth and makes it a law. So we need to understand these basic principles. So that's what that's trying to say.
Speaking of basic principles, Shell Bell has thrown a question in. Well, it's not really a question, it's more a defined statement, I guess. No one can be a sovereign and a citizen. It's a contradiction.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Shell Bell. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. So
there you go.
I think we've even covered that in one of the shows.
Onto our, I've lost my slides. Give me one moment here. I'll be back. Right, on to the next one. Deceit and coercive manipulation escalate the nervous system. This is healing properties of truth. Now, when fear is absent, acceptance of objective truth keeps the nervous system in its natural state of equilibrium. Hence, why young children are incapable of lying until they learn that their safety depends upon concealing and suppressing the truth. Truth is the only force that is capable of healing the suffering of the soul.
So I'm going to use the example that I've seen many times of when you watch children watching a magic act and you see them jump out of their skin every time they've worked out what the trickery is, you know, and they can't help it. They have to point it out. They won't rest until that's sorted out. So that shows you that they're like not able to not tell the truth, right? Their nervous system gets activated when they can see some kind of trickery in place and they need to do something about it. That's a perfect way to understand how we have that inherent requirement for truth, because that's the only way. Because once they get it sorted out, you know, when you see that they've actually been proven that what they're seeing, you know, is a fraud, and they've actually been able to get to that correct, you see them, they settle down, they stop yelling and screaming. So this shows you, you know, by proof that we are geared to be in a state of equilibrium if truth is present. Now, the only way a child will accept a lie is if its safety is dependent on it. And that happens quite quickly. So we get programmed from our natural state of being in that state of equilibrium when we're in a relaxed state because we're willing to accept truth. It's the same reason why you'll hear children say questions like, oh, Mum, why does that man have a big nose? Or why is that man's ears too big, right? They're not hearing that as anything terrible. They're just trying to understand why something is, right? So they're trying to discover something. You know, they don't have a judgment about whether that's right or wrong or good or bad, but then they're told that's not the right thing to say. That's rude. You know what I mean? So they're showing that there's something bad about their inquiry. And that's when they start concealing truth because they know that suffering's coming if they don't. So we teach each other through our experience how to deny the truth. And then that is the spiral that gets worse and worse. And that's how we got to where we are, if you want to look at it in a real simplistic way. And if you want to heal, that we need to we need to get past that fear of accepting the truth, no matter how unpleasant it is. That's the only way we can heal. That's the only reason why we even want to know about truth.
Yep, cool. Truth of authority. A baby knows truth because it's imprinted with a conscience. Therefore, babies are their own authority, and that never changes. What changes is the level of programmed fear present in one's conscious awareness that decides the level of objective truth one is willing to accept. Hence the term selective truth, aka confirmation bias, or narcissistic bubble reality.
So if we come to a place where we realize that there's going to be some kind of suffering involved if we accept the truth, then we reorientate ourselves to create a story so we can avoid that suffering. And then that means that we're required to actually refuse truth. And so the next video that's coming up now actually explains that really well. So instead of me talking about it too much, I just thought I'd leave it to the woman in the video. This she does really well. Her name's Teal Swan, guys. If you're interested, I'd look her up on YouTube. She's done a lot of wonderful things about truth.
So let me just check and make sure I've got the one. Conditional truth is the one we're looking for, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Here we go.
As people, we have a very complicated relationship with the truth. Very few of us actually want the truth, regardless of what we might say, and very few of us see the actual value of truth. Now, the fact that the idea of truth or reality in general is a hotly debated topic within philosophy circles to begin with just adds fuel to the fire, but it's still important to understand why it is that we don't want the truth, don't value the truth, and therefore resist the truth. Let's begin by looking at the resistance that we as people have to the truth. People who resist the truth really only resist negative truth, truths that make us feel bad. Now, when I say negative, that is a judgment. One could say that any truth, even the ones we think are negative, are actually positive truth. However, for the sake of your understanding, it's important to understand that people don't resist things that they feel are positive truths. They only resist things they feel are negative truths. The reason people resist negative truths is that they feel as if those negative truths always lead to something bad or unwanted. Usually this is a negative consequence that we feel like we can't deal with, can't face, or do anything to change. In general, people who are brave enough to see the truth, what is, are usually people who believe that they can do something about the truth, what is. And because those of us who don't value the truth experience higher degrees of powerlessness, we feel powerless to do anything to prevent or resolve those bad things. Therefore, we tend to experience truth as leading to only bad things, never solutions. Of course, those consequences that we might imagine will come as a result of the truth may or may not actually exist. Nonetheless, the more powerless you feel, the less okay with painful truth you will be. For example, let's say that we experienced in our childhood our father being honest, telling the truth, about the fact that he wasn't romantically in love with our mother anymore, and as a result, he left the family. And as a result, not only did we suffer because of that truth, so did everyone else in the family, and we could do absolutely nothing about it. See, truth leads to negative consequences. That's the association that we make. Or maybe in our childhood, we experienced ourselves being honest about or demonstrating the fact that we were jealous of our sister. And as a result, all that happened is we were shamed and our family lost respect for us, and it created an adversarial relationship with our sister, all of which could have been avoided by not telling the truth. Many of us simply don't understand why you would ever tell a truth or stand by a truth or become aware of a truth if it leads to a negative consequence. Same goes for actions. Many people don't understand why you would ever take an action if it led to a negative consequence. In alignment with this, many of us just do not understand how any truth, even negative truths, could lead to something positive. This is not an experience that our life points to. In fact, all the proof we have in our life points to the exact opposite. That truth, especially negative truth, just leads us towards some negative experience. Those of us who are resistant to the truth often come from backgrounds where the truth was used against us in some negative way. Now, this has nothing to do with truth in and of itself. It actually has to do with just being in unhealthy environments. But let me give you an example of what I mean. If the truth is you loved a certain toy, then your parents may have used that truth against you in that that was the toy they took away when you were not complying to something they wanted you to comply to. Or let's say we were honest with our teacher that we just forgot to do our homework. Instead of telling her a story that the dog ate it, we experienced ourselves being flunked and labeled as a bad kid. Okay, so obviously, if we are truthful, if we tell the truth and we stand by the truth, it leads to some sort of negative consequence. Bottom line, we do not want other people to use the truth against us. So we won't align with truth to begin with. Often those of us who are resistant to the truth also have a very hard time discerning what is real and what is true. Confusion is common amongst us. If we are honest in childhood, We could never really tell what the reality was, or we were sold the idea that something was 100% true, only to find out later, after years of believing it, that it wasn't. This causes us to distrust and even doubt the idea of truth, as well as doubt our own ability to perceive it, much less anyone else's. Now, I must say, if you are somebody who grew up in a particularly religious household, only to become disillusioned in that religion later and to realize that all those things you were sold in childhood aren't accurate, you have a complicated relationship with truth, whether you see it or not. Something that is really important to know, and I can guarantee you have never heard this from anyone else, is that if you are somebody who has a complicated relationship with truth, meaning you don't really like it, you have a little bit of resistance to it, you actually value stability more than other people. I mean, a lot more. So much so that you invite the shadow side of stability into the room. We tend to be averse to complexity and want simplicity, and we experience negative truths as being destabilizing and destructive, therefore as an oppositional force to success. The reality is, of course, exactly the opposite. When some truth enters the picture in any situation, and that truth destabilizes or destroys something, then whatever it destabilized or destroyed was not actually real in the first place. It was an illusion. But the problem is that illusions, they feel very real. Illusions give this false sense of stability to people, which some people are willing to commit to. For example, a woman might have a husband who is cheating on her for her whole marriage, but the illusion that she has a good marriage still makes her feel stable and like she has a foundation to build her life on, as opposed to seeing the truth that he is cheating, and as a result, feeling her entire life is destabilized and her marriage is destroyed. Often, those who are resistant to the truth do not value truth or what is real over other things. Things like stability, things like feeling good, things like control. And our reality is flipped. Our wires are crossed. We see truth as an oppositional force to these things, when in reality, truth is our only way of actually achieving these things. This means we are conditional with truth. What I mean by we are conditional with truth is that we only want truth if it leads to us feeling more control. We only want truth if it leads to us feeling better emotionally. We only want truth if it leads to higher self-esteem. You see, we're conditional about when we will take truth and when we won't take truth. And this inevitably leads us down this path where we justify our conditional attitude towards truth with ideologies that actually support illusion. You ready for a huge truth bomb?
Oh, leaving us hanging fits.
Yeah, I just took too long to switch it off. So sorry, guys. Unfortunately, from my end, it all broke up, so I didn't get to see much of that. It was just all frozen. So I'm running on memory on what that was about. From what I recall, it's about the way that we are, the world that we live in. It's all about safety. So the things that we accept, what we call truths, a lot of the times they're actually not, because what we're seeking is control. So we will actually accept things that are not true, but we'll convince ourselves they are, just so we can get that sense that we have control over our lives. When she said the thing about truth, people fear truth because it's a destabilizing effect, has a sorry, I'm messing this up, that it has a destabilizing effect. Well, the thing about truth is if you've accepted truth, you'd never fear being destabilized. So this is what's going to get challenged tonight. There's a few things that are going to come up for some people where that's what they're going to experience when certain things show up. They're going to see that as destabilizing. So I'm just setting up the terrain of what's coming down the pike, guys. So certain people are going to have a very visceral relationship with what that's like to feel destabilized, because their beliefs are going to be challenged, and it's going to show them, those who are in that space, what it actually feels like. Right now, anyone who's listening to this, because you haven't been challenged, you're having an intellectual understanding of this, but very soon there will be a visceral one, and then you will actually get a real true understanding of what's being said here.
All right, codified law. In contrast to law, codified law is complicated because its intention is to create the illusion that the whims and prejudices of self-elected rulers are impartial and bipartisan, therefore grounded in objective morality. Hence, the term moral relativism.
So I had this discussion with people last week, and it was about, like how come in certain different countries they have a different way of understanding morality. And I'm saying, no, that's not them understanding morality. That's them following a codified law they've accepted as moral. And then I use the example of those countries that have stoning to death, right? I remember watching this Iranian movie where it was about that. And the woman was accused of adultery because the husband didn't want to be married anymore. So he knew that he could just say that, and then he could get out of that would give him a divorce. And unfortunately, she had to pay a pretty heavy price. Where they covered her up to her neck in sand. So she was buried into the ground. And then the rocks were thrown at her. But the first person to throw the rock was her dad. And so I said to the people that I was talking to, I said, well, when it came time for him to pick up that rock, he was shaking. So if he actually didn't have any morality, he wouldn't have been shaking. But what happened is he turned around, saw the crowd around him that were, after blood, right? And that's what he went and overrode his intuitive understanding of morality, because he feared the consequence of what would happen to him and his standing, which he made more precious than his morality. So this is what we need to be able to define the difference between morality, which is always consistent, and the ways that people get around it. And codified law, when you accept someone else's authority about what they define as moral, that is you accepting immorality. And that's all codified law is designed to do, is get you to accept immorality as moral. And then you will defend it to the death, because that's what they did. They threw rocks at this woman and killed her. Yeah. And she was totally innocent. This is how bad this stuff can get for us if we don't actually look at the truth.
Termed law because the use of the word law is the favorite mind control trick used by the immoral man to conceal his intention, to indulge his insatiable appetite, to actualize his prejudice and lust for absolute power. The immoral man prefers codified law because it gives him time to meticulously craft ways to defy the very laws set to entangle the moral man. The immoral man fears standing on principle because his immorality cannot be concealed from view, as there is no opportunity to premeditate an escape plan when standing on principle, as principle favors no man and can only be experienced in the moment.
So another way to understand what all that means is that every single day, every moment of our lives, we are exercising principle. That's how we navigate all our relationships. And when they go well, that's when both parties or all parties concerned are actually adhering to certain principles, usually the principles of morality. And when they don't go so well, either one or more parties has stepped outside of those boundaries of what falls within those confines, and that's when we have friction. But we're not actually sitting there thinking ahead of ourselves, oh, how am I going to go into this interaction? What am I going to say? How am I going to get around things? Most people aren't doing that. The only one who thinks like that is the one who wants to control the situation and get what they want. And that's what the immoral man does, right? And that's why they seek to actually define the terms of what their agreement they want to live under that suits them, so they can get around it, but it will ensnare the man who stands on principle, because it's immoral. So of course you're going to get snared by something that's immoral. It's the perfect mind trick. So if you're wondering what that says, hopefully that's cleared it up a little bit more for you.
The word law imprints ideas into the psyche that the immoral man's prejudice is universally binding and unchangeable by anyone other than the immoral man, as a means to manipulate belief that man, through government, has the ability to grant themselves moral permission to impose their will over others by claiming to act as intercessory for a supreme power as a tactic to ensure private prejudice is non-negotiable. A cunningly devious tactic that subliminally programs the mind to believe defense of morality is immoral.
Yeah, so basically, same thing. The word law, when you hear that word law, it has an imprint. It's like something you cannot argue against. There's a higher authority in place that none of us have any control over, and we are meant to submit to. That's what that actually imprints in your mind. Now, if we understand the true meaning of what law is a set of conditions that are binding and immutable, right? So nothing that man creates in his mind is binding and immutable. It's changeable. Yet, how do you get someone to accept it, that it's binding and immutable? You have them believe they are actually scribing something that exists, as a condition. But we don't need to have it scribed. We already live it every moment of our lives. So this is the thing about understanding. When you stand on principle, it cannot be written down. It can only be experienced. So anyone who seeks to write anything down, they are not writing down a principle. They're setting the limits of how they interpret a principle so they can get a differential advantage over the ones who are going to fall into that trap. That's why these politicians get away with murder, right? Because they set it up. If you think about what happened when they made the jabs mandatory, who didn't have to get jabbed? None of the politicians did. Did the judiciary? No. Well, how did they get around that, right? Codified law. This is how it's done. So there is no version of codified law that's moral. This is what needs to be understood because it doesn't stand on principle. Only things that stand on principle have authority because they're neutral. They belong to all of us. They do not favor anybody. They do not discriminate on anyone. So that's how we can understand authority, when it's coming from a neutral position.
Common law versus codified law. Common law, the defense of the universal principles of morality. Codified law, the Ten Commandments, ecclesiastical law, canon law, trust law, KGB, knight law, equity law, statute law.
So KJB is the King James Bible. Ecclesiastical law, that's what that whole, law, land, air, water. So that ecclesiastical is the air. So crown law, you hear a lot of people now call themselves crown. That's the most superior law. These are all codified laws. These are all man-made inventions. I just wanted to address one of the things that came in here. Someone said sovereign is superior to sovereign. Well, I'd love you to explain what's more superior to someone being their own master of themselves, because that's all sovereign means, that you're above the rulership and control of another. So if you can explain to me what's more superior than that, I'd love to hear it. But I haven't heard an explanation that actually goes past that. So these are all those mind tricks, right? That how you get people to believe there's different grades of superior. And, a lot of people fall for it because what happens? They're seduced by their ego. Their ego wants to believe there is such a thing as someone more superior than another, because that makes them feel superior in the sense that they're better than somebody else, right? And the only thing that gets drawn to that is the ego. So this is a really good way to ensnare people who are ego-driven when they start believing these kind of things as truths. But that you cannot discover any of those things in nature. So where's the evidence of anyone being superior to anyone else unless they're using some kind of mind trick, coercion, or force, right? And that's not superior anyway because they have to use tricks. That doesn't make you superior.
All right, into our next video.
Yep, let's get into it. I don't get to see what they actually are, guys, so I'm sorry if I can't actually elaborate on them because it doesn't come through on my end.
I don't know why that would be. Is anybody in the chat having a hard time seeing the videos when they're playing?
Just seems to happen from my end, from what I can tell. I think everyone else is fine because when I watch the playbacks, it's all fine. So it's just on my end.
Okay, it's all right. I was going to say I haven't mentioned it, but we are running on Starlink this evening.
Oh wow!
So that might be why my system is working okay. All right, so
this is just Mark Passio, guys. He's going to explain the principle of mentalism. I've actually covered it before, but I really like the way he does it. So it's really important that we understand how reality is shaped, and he's about to explain it.
I consider myself a de-occultist, one who takes things out of hiding and presents them openly. These are the 7 general principles of natural law. Many people who have studied some variants of occultism may recognize these as what are known as the Hermetic principles. Hermetic essentially comes from Hermes. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great one, as he was referred to in the ancient Greek mystery traditions. He was considered a messenger of the gods. He brought the wisdom of the gods down to humanity. Okay, in the ancient Egyptian and Cometian traditions, he was the scribe of the gods known as Thoth. But the Hermetic tradition is named such because it's hermetically sealed, like natural law is. Natural law is hermetically sealed. It is binding principles that are immutable. They are laws that are in operation that cannot be changed. Hence, they are hermetically sealed. So these 7 general principles, they are mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, which is a huge one, which we'll be getting into, and gender. So I'm going to briefly describe what each of these are and what they are about. The principle of mentalism states that the all, everything in creation, is actually a manifestation of mind. The all is mind. And what this means is everything that happens has to be a result of a mental state which preceded it. Everything. For anything to exist, thoughts had to form first, and then they formed the physical reality after. The universe itself is a mental construct of the Creator. Thoughts lead to the manifestation of things and events. Thoughts create conditions. Thoughts create things and conditions. They cannot just magically manifest themselves. Thought comes first. Thoughts create our state of existence and the quality of our experience here on earth, ultimately. Therefore, be responsible for everything. We should be responsible for everything that we create by being responsible for that which we think. Because the thought processes are what are driving the behaviors. People behave the way they do because they have certain belief systems embedded in the mind and running like a program. Their thoughts and their emotions are driving their actions. So the behavior is not magically suddenly going to just change. The thoughts and emotions have to change because they're the driving force behind the behavior. That's when reality will change. See, people don't want to hear that, once again. They don't want to hear, if you want to change reality, you, yourself, have to change the way you think. Because the way you think is not conducive to the requirements for getting what you say you want. They're doing the exact opposite of that in many cases. So that's the principle of mentalism.
Wow. So he knows how to speak, doesn't he?
Yeah. So before I carry on, I'm just looking at this statement by someone who's calling himself "Love is the Law," and the statement is, "I think this guy's a bit delusional, sounding like an atheist." Now, here's the thing about how when we lead with what we think, we are coming off an opinion. We are not coming off anything knowledge, right? So when we start with what I think, you are just saying what your private prejudices are in your biases. And so that in itself is a contradiction. So to call yourself "love is the law" and then lead with what you think about what someone's delusional or not, well, then you have no evidence, right? You've not looked at any of the lead up to how we got here, right? You've not even bothered. You've not led with any curiosity to try and understand. You just go out straight with that statement. It means to act in contradiction. And only one who acts in contradiction can be a slave. And so these people, they give themselves these titles, yet they don't even understand what it is they're saying. And so here's contradiction in motion, right? We see it all the time. And the only way it can happen is when you accept a belief that you've come to believe is a truth. So when someone says, "I think this guy's delusional," they've actually convinced themselves that that's an actual truth. But where is their evidence? Now, if we all go through life going, "Well, whatever I think is true," how are we ever going to unite? Where's the common ground if we're going based on our preferences, biases, and proclivities? How do we find common ground? So these people who want to say they want to fight for truth, how can they when they're leading with what they think? This is a really clever mind trick, right? As soon as you hear the word "I think," you know there's going to be an argument coming. It's a dead certainty. So back to what Mark was saying, he's basically explaining that if you want to control someone, get into their mind and control how they think. And very few people are aware that it's happened to them since day one, since they were born. And when you try and show them that how it's happened, they will fight you to the death. So that's that same meme that comes out of the, I think it's the Matrix one, where it's they don't want to get unplugged from the system, right? That's it in real time. This is when people don't want to hear how they've been programmed through their thinking. They don't want to hear it. Because what's happened, they've put their life force energy into the behaviors that have come from that kind of thinking. So they're not happy to actually go back and take a look at it. It's like saying to every single parent who had their child jabbed, asking them, "You had one job to do. That job was to protect your child. That is your actual biological reason as to why you're here, is to protect your child. Now, do you think they're going to be willing to face the fact that they did the opposite? No way in hell. So this is the kind of way people clutch at things that they do, because they know if they face it, they don't have the resources to survive it. So they cling to their beliefs because their actions have put them in a place where they're now in a very precarious position. Do they have the courage to own up to, did their actions serve what they were really seeking? Very few people have that courage.
All right, next video has a very interesting title, Superior Myth.
Yeah, so this one goes into how the whole mind trick was started through studies that people have put into how we what energy comes in, how we come into that whole idea that superior, inferior exist, because that's the deal breaker there, guys. Very few people understand that this superior, inferior myth is running through every aspect of our lives, and we act on it every moment of our lives, and we don't even know we're doing it.
They're both related. In our work, we see parents who punish children. And it's the same thinking that leads the parents to punish thinking as that lead world leaders to think we have to punish whole nations of people. So they're both related to a way of thinking that started, as best some people I've read believe started about 8,000 years ago, when a myth started over the planet about how the world began. And in this myth, it was held that a very virtuous male god crushed to smithereens an evil female goddess, and out of this crushing of the evil force with the good force, that energy is what created the planet and the people on it. And this started a rather tragic image then, that human beings are basically created out of nasty energy, and that therefore we need to have some superior people control us. And some theologians and anthropologists that I've studied seem to think that this is how this all got started, this idea that we're basically made out of evil energy, and therefore we need to find those people who are closest to the gods, and these people are our superiors and have a right to control us. Well, this is where we started with the idea of blame and criticism and punishment and reward. I work now with cultures that evolved out of a different consciousness than that have almost no violence, but they have a radically different way of thinking. They don't have this thinking that some people are superiors, and these superiors have a right to control those beneath them. And so that's where I think it began.
There you go.
So if anyone's interested in really unpacking the Matrix, I highly recommend you start looking into Marshall Rosenberg. I learned so much from him in ways that I can never learn from anyone else. But this is like real intimate knowledge of yourself, and just how much knowledge has been suppressed about your true divine capacity to understand yourself. Because if you can't understand yourself in a deep, intimate way, then you are going to be controlled. It's just that simple. And from him, I've learned the most subtle ways how it happened. So I'm deeply grateful for the fact that this knowledge is out there. It's up to you guys whether you're willing to actually follow through if your curiosity stimulates you to want to, but that resource is there. So we spoke earlier about codified law and the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
So we're going to just go through the first 4 points. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, what it says, what point 1 is. Can you read that tablet?
Yeah, I can bring that up on my screen a bit better. Okay, the 10 commandments are listed there on the tablets. And subliminal programming: moral and virtuous to pledge servitude to an external authority without question, also known as obedience programming, self-indulgence, and separation. The arrow is pointing to...
Yeah, that's number 1. Can you read what that says? Because I can't. It's too small for me.
I am the Lord your God. You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve.
Yeah, so basically it's saying there is some superior being that you need to worship, right? Like, what is that? That's what cults do. They have that superior structure, right? So they're teaching you right there the actual way to separate from your own divine capacity to know yourself, right? That someone knows better than you and you must submit to them. That's full tilt obedience programming. And that comes from that self-indulgent energy, right? Where it separates us from the divine aspects of ourselves, that somebody else, some other force knows better than us. So we better submit to them if we want to be safe. That's what that's doing to you, right? Very subliminally, very subtly, but the messaging is very clear because the majority of the population across the planet operates from that belief there is some higher authority. Otherwise, they'd never submit to government. They just wouldn't.
True. Number 2, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain.
So
that is
as you can see,
of external authority.
Yeah, that's telling you what you shall not do. So it's giving you a threat. You better not do it. All right. So that's stimulating fear of an external authority. So it's beautiful programming, step by step.
Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day.
Which is behavioral training. Yeah.
Well,
and ritualistic practice. Now, if we have a look, like when we did the program, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where I had Larkin Rose explaining the difference between how is it that he can't get to rob you just by writing on a piece of paper, but Congress can. The difference between that, why people accept what Congress writes down on paper and what any individual man is the practice of rituals. Because what happens in Congress or in Parliament, what do? They go through this debating process, you know what I mean? And they look like they're all antagonistic towards one and each other, and then there's this, it's got to go to the upper house and it's got to come back down. That's all a ritual. That's why it's an act. It's an act of Parliament because they're operating from a ritual. And so this was already pre-programmed in us before we even had Parliament. We were already being softened up for that ritualistic capacity. So we would accept things as truths because they follow a ritual. And we're ritualistic beings. It's very, very cleverly done, guys. It's using a physical experience to get you to believe something. This is the level of investigation that we need to start looking into.
All right, moving on.
And number 4 as well, Carl, if you just go back up, there's one more, the 4th one. If you can read that one.
Oh, honor your father and your mother. The duty and obligation are virtuous.
Yeah, so it's telling you that you need to submit to a higher authority, right? So your mother and father, that they symbolize an authority, right? A perceived authority, and that you need to submit. And to do that, right, that's a virtuous thing. So they're setting the ideas already for you in your mind of what is virtuous and what is not. And these are all immoral acts, right? But that's done so subtly. Now, the remainder of it, like you could work the rest of it out for yourself, right? But they had to program you first to make all the other things that are common sense to you seem like it's all come from some divine source.
Yeah. And just like that raises a very, very valid point that the calendars would change, languages, words would change. The true understanding of ancient text was lost. So, absolutely, that was the case. All right, let me get to the next one. Continuing on codified law. The definition of law is a set of pre-existing conditions that are binding and immutable. How can man systematically arrange that which is already in existence in order for life to exist? One can codify rules and agreements because rules and agreements are a construct of the mind. However, the mind exists because of the laws of nature, therefore cannot reorder the conditions upon which it requires to exist. The two words are in contradiction to one another, just like sovereign citizen, making it an oxymoron.
So I'm hoping that makes sense, guys. Use the word codified. That has one set of meanings and law has another. And so as separate words, yep, they're totally fine. But when you put them together, they're in opposition to one another, so they don't make any sense. So just wanted to give a little bit of definition around that. Like, how can we codify something that we require for our existence? It's like saying that if I have a glass of vodka, right, that I can now write down on paper that it's not going to affect me the way that nature says so. And just because I've written it down on paper, that's actually now going to happen the way I said it. Right? That's what codified law seeks to do. It seeks to get you to believe something that's opposite to what actually is a law. So just thought I'd give that a bit more definition.
All right. Christianity, exoteric. Exoteric is the prescriptive form that externalizes authority to a superior creator being. Stems from the belief that there exists a class of superiors with an inherent right to decide what behaviors are moral and immoral. Born out of myths and superstitions that propagate the idea that human beings are created out of evil energy, creating the need for superiors to control the inferiors.
So just wanted to stop you there, if that's okay, Carl. So that video we watched a moment ago with Marshall explaining it, that's another version of that. So the Christianity we've been given is what's called exoteric. It's very prescriptive. You're told what the right things are to do if you're going to go to where? A place that's going to reward you if you do the right things. That's all fear energy, right? So when people say Christianity, they need to be clear which one they're speaking about. And unfortunately, the majority of people are speaking about exoteric without really realizing they are. And so there's another version, which is esoteric, and that's an actual science. So that's why I put the two there so that people understand there's two forms. Just like there's polarities in night and day, same with Christianity.
All right, well, let's look at esoteric. The science in pursuit of objective truth, discovery grounded in principle, is the highest aspiration of one who practices esoteric Christianity. I'm saying that with a fruit tingle in my mouth. The practice of this science requires acknowledgement that man comes pre-stamped with personal biases, as nature requires difference, therefore cannot be perfect, therefore the highest aspiration to align oneself with the neutrality of truth, which is constant. Hence, the willingness to accept the neutrality of objective morality, no matter how uncomfortable, is recognized as a pathway to peace.
So if you think about, if we all go into our thoughts, what we believe, what are our prejudices, what are our biases, we're different for that reason. We need to be, because if we weren't, there would be nothing exciting about life. If we were all exactly the same, we all had the same preferences, we all had the same biases, there'd be nothing to learn from each other, right? But there's still got to be a way where all that difference can still come together and we can unify. And what is that? It's got to be somewhere that comes from a place of neutrality that doesn't favor anybody, doesn't have any preferences towards anyone, right? It doesn't discriminate. And if we don't find that, we can't have peace. So this is about understanding where does that place exist. And esoteric Christianity is that pursuit of finding where that neutrality is, right? The line of truth, because it never bends. It's always constant. And if we don't align ourselves with it, how are we going to meet each other in that neutral place? Where's that neutral field? Right? That's what this is trying to explain. That's why it's a science, because it requires effort to be able to discern the difference between information that is not provable and information that is verifiable, right? There's got to be a way that you can discern that. And very few people have been given those tools, because if we would never be under this control structure.
Yep, true.
So I don't need to go into this too much. This is the science. It's called the trivium method. As you can see at the bottom, it just says knowledge. So what we're getting is the input, and that is what's information. Now, a lot of people don't know that a lot of the information they're getting is not knowledge, because they don't have the capacity to discern it. And if they're getting stuff that's coming into them that they're accepting as knowledge that isn't, then their processing method, which is the next block, is going to be flawed. So you first need to be able to have a capacity to be able to discern the difference between what is knowledge and what it is that's comfortable for you, right? And a lot of people, very, very many, far too many, should I say, are not capable of that discernment. So therefore, the next step that they do, the processing, is flawed, because they're accepting flawed information and accepting it as knowledge. And then what does it do? It stimulates flawed behavior, and then what does that do? It creates a reality. Now, if you want to look at how we've got to where we are, that's it right there, right? That's why the media had to control everything, because they're the ones who are the gatekeepers of what they're calling knowledge. And if most people are not using their capacity for discernment, they're going to accept it. And then they're going to have a faulty processing method. And once they do that, their behavior is going to be out of alignment with what they truly seek. And then when that's happening on the mass, right, that is our reality. So if we don't understand the science of it, right, because this is all knowledge that people have had for thousands of years. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's up to us to discover it through force of will. So this is why it's been put on offer, guys, so you can actually decide whether that's what you want to do, of how you decide the difference between information and knowledge. It's up to you guys.
Illusion destabilized by truth. The overwhelming majority claiming to be in search of truth have a conditional relationship with truth. Privately, they fear truths that destabilize their reality. Anyone who holds such a fear detect an illusion, because truth cannot destabilize truth.
So if you're someone who's in search of truth, you've got a method by which you can uncover it. No question anyone will ever ask you will be flustering you, or will you get, like too over the top and trying to shut them down, or, things like that. You will actually be like going, oh, well, I welcome that, because now that gives me more capacity to actually clarify what I'm trying to explain. So that gives you more capacity to get clearer. Someone who's claims to be a keeper of knowledge will have that energy in their body. They actually welcome the questions. They don't fear them, because they know they can't be destabilized, because all they're doing is expressing that which they know. The difference is that they have a capacity to give it literacy. So all they're doing is dispensing that which other people know, which they're not capable of giving literacy to. So that's the only difference between someone who is speaking knowledge versus to someone who's receiving it, is whether they have the capacity to understand the words and how they land in their body.
Right. Well, this is certainly an old one. Once you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, religion becomes useless. That is a great play on, obviously, the forbidden fruits, and how true it is, Fitz, how true it is.
So just so I can give some clarity to religion doesn't just mean believing in an external authority. It actually means anything that's going to prevent the forward exploration of the search for truth. Anything that limits that is a religion. That's what that means. So it doesn't actually have to mean the classic, believing in some deity and things like that. It's any activity or any belief that will actually thwart the forward progress of your expression or your expansion of your consciousness.
Roger that. All right. Let's, we've got another video.
Let me just see what that one is. I've got my own little copy here just so I can catch up with that one.
Illusion consequence I have.
Oh, yeah. So this is Teal Swan again. And she speaks about how important it is to actually understand, if you're hanging on to an illusion, to understand the consequence of that. So I think she does a wonderful job here.
Those of us who are resistant to the truth often have a pretty good idea of what consequences of pain the truth leads to. But those of us who are resistant to the truth have a very difficult time seeing how the opposite, how illusion, actually leads us to pain and consequences, in fact, even more so. We have a hard time with truth because we want something different than what is. We want to create something new and different from what is. This isn't a problem, this is actually a beautiful thing. The problem is when we're in denial of what is and when we're in resistance to what is. We need to question if feeling good, no matter whether feeling good is completely out of reality, completely out of alignment with truth, and totally an illusion, is more important to us than being in reality and standing squarely in the truth. And I suggest to you that it's very important for you to know where you stand on that issue, especially going into the future life path potentials for humanity. Blue pill or red?
Wow, she speaks so well, doesn't she?
Yeah, like I've chopped this up. This is one big long video. It's about 18 minutes, but I've just chopped it up into certain sections. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to watch what she actually said. So yeah, I didn't catch what she said to be able to give that more body. So I'm hoping what she said was good enough, and we can move down.
It was pretty clear. It was pretty clear, I would say. All right, let's get back into this. 5D truth. God is consciousness, not the creator, but the very source of creation itself. It's not something separate, superior, and condemning entity that most religious institutions claim. By believing that God is something exterior from yourself, you separate yourself from the source and immediately become a limited being. It is a force, a divine energy, a frequency that exists within you and everybody. Get in tune with that shit and you'll beam like the sun.
So why I like this, I'm not going to say it's true or it's false. What I'm going to say is that it appeals to me And the reason why it appeals to me is because it's in alignment with my values. And my values are to find unity, singularity, and unify where we all have commonness, right? And so if I'm going to believe something, would it not be more prudent to go into a belief where it's in alignment with my values? So there's no contradiction in anything that I do or say, that it's constantly consistent and it stands for the principles that I claim to want to uphold. So that's why I'm not saying this is true or not, but if I'm going to give a definition to what that word God is, this one's going to sit more in alignment with what I'm actually seeking for life on this planet. So, people talk about 3D, 5D. 3D is separation, 5D is unity. So how do we unify? We see that which exists in others exists in us. There's no separation. And that's why I love this one, but I'm not going to tell you it's true or it's false. It's totally up to you how you take that.
Common law versus codified law. Common law, the defense of man's unlimited nature as the highest aspiration. Codified law. Oh, do you want to speak to that?
I was just going to say, like, if you look at that previous meme, it actually said about the unlimited nature, right? So you see the link here, that this is, what's overlapping is the unlimited nature of man, just like the unlimited nature of who you are. If you accept that idea that you are the all, right? So there's a lot more power in that kind of understanding than seeing a God as some kind of external creator being to you. That's a place of division. So that's why I like that one. And the other one fits in with codified law because it seeks to put limits on man's unlimited nature. So that's why I put that one there, so you could see how it's all linking together.
Yep. Questions for aspiring leaders that claim the end state is a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western democracy. I reckon I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, it does sound familiar, doesn't it?
It does. Number 1, define sovereignty. Number 2, what is the defining principle of democracy? Number 3, define morality. Number 4, does your end state have provision for a mechanism by which democracy and sovereignty can be preserved? If yes, what is it? Number 5, how do you define Christianity? 6, define the difference between exoteric and esoteric Christianity. 7, which version of Christianity do you stand for? 8, define the meaning of service. 9, define the purpose of government. And 10, in the governmental system, who is in power and who is in service?
So we've got about another 3 slides to go with all these questions in it, guys. So if you actually want to get some serious answers, right, we've already covered these questions in all the lessons up till now. So they're already been answered for you. Yet there are people that are aspiring to say that they're the new leadership and they've got the people's best interests at hand that have not yet answered a lot of these questions. And there's a lot more they are required to answer before we can truly have confidence that they understand what leadership really means, even though they say it. So we need to get them to prove it with their knowledge.
So standing for a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western democracy. These are the questions for people wishing to stand for that kind of thing. Moving on, question number 11. Define the meaning of power. Number 12. Define the meaning of law. Number 13. In a correctly functioning democracy, who gets to make the law? 14. How are laws made in a correctly functioning democracy? 15. Define the meaning of public servant. 16. What roles within the branches of government come under the definition of service? 17. What is your plan as to how the people can get the assurance they require to confirm that those acting in the role of public servant are behaving according to the definition of service? And 18, what is the purpose of a constitution?
So this is a really, really important, because the reason why I set up the whole social proof channel was for people to answer this question, and they are failing miserably. People do not understand any of these things, and that is why we are being treated the way we are, because that was never made clear to anyone in that public service sector, ever. None of this information has crossed their desks. These people sound like they're intelligent, but they're actually not. They're very intellectual, but they're not intelligent, because these are questions an intelligence would be able to answer, and they cannot.
Yes, I would agree they cannot. 19. What specific components must exist in a constitution for the end state you've articulated to become a reality? Number 20. What is the definition of common law? 21. Does outsourcing knowledge of common law to others benefit the actions of one claiming to be a leader that espouses personal responsibility must be the highest aspiration for all? 22. Are there any common law groups in Australia? If so, which ones, and what is the method by which you discern the difference? 23. What is codified law? 24. Is there a difference between codified and common law? If so, what is that difference?
So same things, like these are really critical things, because if you're pitching that you're going to be a leader, yet you don't actually investigate what common law is, and you don't understand that that's the beginning and end of every form of conduct that we would base our actions on. If you're not clear on that, that's a really dangerous position to launch from, because there's some of the decisions you're going to make on behalf of the people are going to be in opposition to what you're claiming you're actually wanting as your end state. That's why it's really important to actually understand what it is you said and what your end state is and how you specifically understand it. We cannot go and just do superficial understanding of this, guys. It has to be meticulously and forensically investigated, because the quality of our life is dependent on this. So we can't cut corners here. This is the level of investigation that's required.
Question number 25. What is a right and what is not a right? 26. Define integrity. 27. Define your understanding of the meaning of the democratic rule of law and the mechanism by which it can be restored and preserved. 28. Is there a contract in existence today that binds officers of the state to make decisions on behalf of we the people that fall within the confines of the universal principles of morality and holds them accountable to the consequences of breaches to said contract? 29. If you were to discover the existence of said contract, do you believe it to be prudent to spare no expense in educating the population on the truth? And 30. If it was proven to you that the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution is an act of institutionalised treason, would you continue to promote it as part of your solution? If so, please explain how truth can be built from a lie.
So this is the thing that I find quite disturbing. Some of the things I've heard being said by certain people who call themselves a leader. And they'll say things like, when we get into power. Well, that's very disturbing. And here's the thing. If you think back to when this whole mind control structure started, did they go, oh, you know what? We're going to pull the wool over people's eyes so badly, right? They'll never fall for it. So we just won't even try. No, they went, this is going to be like need maximum effort. So every resource we have is going to be put into it. Well, why wouldn't you go to bat for truth with that same level of integrity? Like, that's what I don't understand. Why would you say, you know what, no one will ever actually believe it, so we'll start where they understand the world, right? How is that the same energy that those who wish to lie and cheat and deceive, how is that? Is the truth not worth putting in that level of effort? Because if you think about how we were controlled, it was through a universal message, right? It was uniform messaging. That's all it was.
Yeah.
So if you were going to back the truth, you would just use the same messaging. And it's going to happen a lot easier because you're going to be speaking truth. You won't need to repeat it so often, but it needs to be universal. It needs to come from all your angles, all your resources. They all need to be aligned with it. And is that not worth going to bat for and sparing no expense? That's the question that needs to be asked these people.
Yeah, absolutely. Singularity and unity and common threads. So, singularity, unity. Law, truth, principle, knowledge, conscience, morality, and intelligence. The common thread, permanent, exists in perpetuity, cannot be created nor destroyed, cannot be controlled or manipulated. It's binding and it's immutable, does not discriminate nor favour, is neutral, is accessed through love energy.
So what's on display here is that which is universal, right? That which is neutral. This doesn't favor anybody, right? So they're all the same thing. Truth, principle, knowledge, conscience, morality, intelligence. Intelligence is your understanding of all those things, right? And we are born with it. That can't be changed. You know, people call it your gut intelligence, you know, your intuition, that kind of stuff. That cannot be manipulated. But what can be manipulated is your mind to actually suppress your intelligence. And so a lot of people, when they define what intelligence is, they'll say it's someone with a university degree. That's so incorrect. Someone with a university degree is very good at being intellectual, absolutely, but not so good at intelligence, because have a look at the choices they've made in their lives. They've all been self-serving. It's all been for personal gain. Intelligence doesn't work to serve the self. Intelligence works to serve the greater good. That's how you know the difference between intellect and intelligence. It's what it's in service of. So if we don't understand these principles, right, we won't be able to differentiate the difference. So everything comes back to principle, our understanding of principle. That's why I'm really hammering this today, guys. Principle is how we solve every single issue that exists, because it favors no one. It is neutral.
Separation and adversary. The common thread too. Okay, separation and adversary. Ego, intellect and thought. Bias, self-belief, or rather belief. Prejudice, preferences and proclivities. And the common thread, subject to change and manipulation. Opposition to objective truth and principle. Self-preservation, self-indulgence, instant gratification, requires coercion and force to gain compliance.
So here we are. This is the same thing as codified law, right? It's all running from this side here, where there's egos, bias, belief, prejudice, proclivities. That just means a leniency to something, your preferences. When they become the highest priority, right, we need to use these techniques on the right-hand side, because truth doesn't require you to do anything. You get to choose whether you accept or refuse it. It doesn't force itself down your throat. It's just there. That's why it's an authority. You know, if we want to act in a position of authority, we are coming from that place. We're not forcing our beliefs on anyone. We're just speaking from what we understand, and we leave it with others, whether they want to accept it or refuse it. And we walk away. We're divorced from the outcome, right? The only time you would want to insist is if some harm is going to come to you. That doesn't happen, right? That's when we're using the principles of morality to understand when harm's coming to us. But if there's no harm on the table, we just leave it there, and they get to choose, right? But if you're wanting to pursue something from this left column here, you're going to have to use the tactics on the right column. That's why you know it doesn't have any authority. That's why police are weaponized, because they have no authority. They're not coming from a place of morality. If they were, they wouldn't be carrying weapons. It's really easy to spot, guys.
All right, the purpose of a constitution. A constitution is a systematic arrangement for the construction of a state that involves the definition of an administration that is to act in service of the people under the supervision and control of the people. The constitution itself becomes a rule book for the state administration itself, but not the people, other than merely to agree to behave within the parameters deemed acceptable by the consciences of the community around them.
So this is not really difficult to understand. See, a lot of people, they'll hear the word constitution and their eyes glaze over. They think it's something complicated, because that's what we've been given. We've been given codified law and made to believe that that is a constitution. No, it's not. It's just, what are the principles we want to live our lives by, right? And then how are we going to actually create an agreement by which we can prove that we're going to get the service we actually say we want. Right? That's pretty much it. That's a real simple way of understanding it.
Right. Okay. Moving on. A constitution would make clear the universal principles that underpin the highest aspirations of the people. This would require clear definition of how authority to make decisions on behalf of the people is granted, a set of protocols that set limits to what the state is allowed to do, the consequences should those boundaries ever be violated, the mechanisms for the delivery of those consequences, along with the ability to practice natural justice under the principles the people agree to live by.
So the thing that can be codified is the agreement by which we're going to make sure that we can access a way to deliver that which has been promised to us, right? That's what you can codify because it's an agreement, but they are not laws. So we need to understand the difference here. And so if a society chooses to live by the principles of morality, how can they be assured they're going to get to practice that? That has to be agreed to in a constitution. And that's what happened in 1215 Magna Carta, which was Article 39. See, this is where the morality aspect is, because there's not the entire document. No, the majority of the stuff is just about the barons getting what they want. That's not what we focus on, right? Because that's the best they could do back at that time because of their feudal structure. What we're focused on is where are the universal principles of morality that are bound in that contract that gives government the legitimacy. Because if we applied Article 39, we would be in charge of everything the government does.
Absolutely. As we should be.
Yeah.
Common law articles of Magna Carta 1215. 1. For a society to live under the principles of morality, there must be common law articles written into the Constitution. 2. A constitution is the arrangement for the construction of a country, nation, or state. 3. Articles 39, 40, and 61 of Magna Carta 1215 are the common law articles that bind government to conduct itself under the principles of universal morality in order to have a mandate of the people. Article number 4. Article 61 is the set of protocols the people agreed to follow in order to restore to moral standards as the highest code of conduct when the state has breached its mandate to govern.
So really simple, guys. Like if we want, to get back to a place where we are back in charge, we just finish the contract. We execute the contract. It's there. It's waiting for us to pick it up. The reason why most people don't know about it is because they spent all their energy. Remember what I said, when they start to set off on a plan to hide the truth from the people, it has to be very, very complicated and very well, very intricate and very enmeshed, and where you can't see top from bottom. And that's why most people won't believe this, because they're just so caught up in immorality, they can't even tell the difference between the two. And you think about what happened with these jabs, right? People were prosecuting those who didn't want to poison themselves like there's something wrong with them, right? So they will act immorally, believing they're acting morally. This is the entire mind trick. And there's a contract out there that they don't want you to know about, because that is like certain death for those who have been running the structure. And everything they've accumulated, right, is going to have to come back to the people. And there's no chance they could bear that. They're not the consciousness, but their level of where they're at in their development just cannot accept it. So they will fight tooth and nail to end any chances of this happening, which is why they're starting to call us all sovereign citizens and calling us domestic terrorists, because they're in a panic now. All right, and if we don't use the law, they're going to get better and better at running us into the ground. I think you dropped out. Did you, Carl?
Law articles of 39, 40, and 61 of Magna Carta 1215. As they are expressions of the universal principles of morality binding on all of us, regardless of personal opinion, prejudice, or bias. Those who stand on principle do not sell knowledge, because knowledge is universally discoverable, therefore cannot be the property of any one individual.
So you'll see there's a lot of groups that call themselves common law groups, but they will sell you the solution, right? You can't sell the truth. It's not for sale. So anyone who's telling you the truth is not going to want to sell it. They're not even going to have it in their consciousness. So right there is telling you they're not selling you that you're not actually getting truth. You're getting someone's beliefs. All right. Otherwise, they'd never sell it. Anyone who is attached to truth would never even consider to sell it because it doesn't belong to them. So there's your first, big red flag right there, guys. All these groups that call themselves common law, the reason why they can't unite is because they're running off certain belief systems. It's got nothing to do with that which is universal, nor is there any principle behind it.
Ain't that the truth? If groups claiming to practice common law were practicing what they preached, it would be self-evident in the level of cohesion between them, as principle does not discriminate nor favour. Deeds are what creates reality. You either stand for objective morality or you do not. Principles are not a negotiating tool to suit one's whims. There is no middle ground nor fence to sit on, because there is no force of will that can alter the outcomes that arise from defying the universal principles built into the fabric of existence. If all the groups claiming common law were standing in defense of the universal principles of morality, there would be an entirely different reality than the one we are enduring. The question needs to be asked as to whether groups claiming to be common law are run by controlled opposition.
So this is a really important question, right? Now, anyone who's been listening to John Wilson lately, he's been making some claims, that are starting to really show that there might be something in this, right? Because, it's been going for over 2 years, guys, and we've made no progress. How is that possible? There's got to be something more to it, right? So if you're being sold a solution, right, you're being just drawn straight back into the system. And it's time to start actually seeing the forest for the trees, right? We're far too down the well for us to keep closing our eyes to this. We need to start taking a proper look with our eyes open without fear of what we're going to find out.
That's a big one, that one.
Yeah.
Groups claiming to operate under common law are yet to define the meaning of common law, let alone demonstrate a clear understanding that common law and universal principles of morality are one and the same. Hence, the lack of agreement between the groups. Evidence of a complete lack of understanding of common law can be found in their open promotion of living in the private and the practice of the exchange of money for knowledge in return for the illusion of safety, which is the epitome of immorality. One who understands principle knows that no one is free until all are free.
So that whole living in the private thing, they're using that seduction of that you can now pull yourself out, which is a self-indulgent act, right? Before you can pull anyone else out, right? That doesn't work like that. You don't get to pull yourself out and be free while everyone else is sucking it. It's not a thing. And so the next video that we're going to go through, hopefully, is one of John Wilson. I love the way he phrases it. And he puts it in a way that makes it undeniable, right? So it's about really looking at what you're doing when you're doing UCC, using equity law, using these ideas of sovereign. There's so many different versions of the same thing. This is all codified law. None of it makes any one of those criminals accountable for them creating this structure in the first place. That means we've got two options. How do you live in the private? What does that mean, right? We only got one life, and it's the same as everyone else's. So how do you now segregate it from everyone else? There's no such thing as living in the private. There's just living. We're all universally bound to each other. We're all different expressions of the same life force. So why would you segregate? Anything that separates is the act of Satanism, right? So they're not even knowing what they're doing. They're actually giving their energy into separation and fragmentation. Well, how are you going to build anything cohesive out of that if you're using that energy of, I've got to save me first?
Yeah, true. All right, let's play the video.
Then we got those that say, let's talk about jurisdiction, right? They say that the solution is to opt out of the jurisdiction, right? Through some very smart work, lots of hard work. I mean, it's very difficult to wrap your mind around it and school yourself, but it can be done where you can become a living man, and you can, not be subject to their jurisdiction, and therefore the tax department and the councils and the state governments and all this shit doesn't apply to you, and you're free. Okay, you're free. And it's been put to me, John, that's what you should be doing. What? Is that the solution? Is that what you're saying? Well, let me tell you, in February of this year, had I had my jurisdiction, had I been outside of their jurisdiction, okay, had I been, now none of this applies to me, would that have saved my life when they were trying to drown me with weather geoengineering? Is that going to help? No. Is it going to save you from chemtrails? Is it going to save you from fluoridisation in your water? Is it going to save you from, direct energy weapons and massive bushfires? Is it going to save you from, poisons and all this? We're at war. They want to murder us. They are murdering us. Removing yourself from their jurisdiction will only hasten and incentivise them to kill you quicker. You got me? Yeah. So I've said, stick that up your ass. Sure, it feels good. 50 years ago, that would have been a real option for me, right? 50 years ago, because they weren't trying to murder us back then. They were trying to kill us, but in other ways, right? But 50 years ago, you probably could have lived your life and died in peace and thought, okay, I've got these monkeys off my back a bit, but not now. Not now. We're at war. They want to kill us. They want to enslave us. And any jurisdictional, manoeuvres and tricky little, smart little thing, forget it. I mean, it's not going to help. But the second thing is this. I say to these people, what are you asking me to do? You're asking me to remove myself from their slave system, but to leave everyone else behind. Is that what you're asking me? What about these disabled kids and elderlies that are in aged care home? Those 300,000 or 400,000 elderly, they can't possibly wrap their minds around this. They can't. These young kids, they can't possibly do this, right? So you're asking me, right, to save myself so I'm okay, but to fuck everyone else. No, I'm not interested. Walking on that sharp rocks, and you know how hard that road is, and you know how hard the road is that everyone else is walking on. Don't ever forget where you come from, okay? So, being an old union lad, our mantra was one in, all in. One in, all in, or one out, all out. That's how we used to run things. So I'm hardwired that, if I can't get my freedom, right, okay, my freedom depends on you getting your freedoms. Yeah. You understand? Yeah. So I'm not interested in any smart little legal manoeuvrings and, language and all this shit. Go away and tell some other clown. If you think that's the solution, one, it's not going to protect. They're going to get you anyway. They're going to get you anyway. And two, I don't want to save myself. I want to save humanity. You got me? I want to save humanity. But I'm not interested, mate, in opting out of the system. I want to fucking rip it to pieces. Because I want to ask you this, right? Okay, look at the body of work. I don't mean him or... Simply saying, look at all of the evidence that they put up collectively. And what does it tell you? It tells you that the governments are fraud, political parties are fraud, the councils are a fraud, the courts are a fraud, the laws are a fraud, the taxations are fraud, on and on and on it goes. A lot of this Freemasonic institutions are fraudulent, they're illegal, they're unconstitutional, they are slave enforcement systems. Now, if anyone thinks winning this war means that I cop some consolation prize and then resubmit back to that, knowing what I now know, forget it. Okay, it's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen. I am never going to submit to child rapists. I'm not going to do it. No, I don't care. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, certainly has a turn of phrase, doesn't he, John?
Yeah, look, I have to say that comment that came up about the man crush, I'm right there with him. So whoever's, I'm right there behind you. So he's probably got a bit of a following by the sound of it. The reason why is because John speaks from someone who understands principle. He understands all the trickery that's thrown to seduce you, to get you to believe you have some kind of power, so you keep engaging in that structure. We cannot engage with it. We need to tear it down. It's just that simple. So if you're going to use something that's going to get you a little bit of comfort, right, you have fallen into the seduction of self-indulgence. And until that's understood, this is going to keep going. And that's why I love what John does. He actually just says it how it is. I mean, he uses different language, but it's coming from the same signaling, right? It's understand the principle. And once you understand the principle, right, you understand there is no negotiating it. It just isn't. And that's what needs to be understood here.
And I've been speaking to John today. In fact, I was meant to be on John's boat today. We were going to have a bit of a chat, but I got delayed this morning. It pushed back my day completely. And we agreed to catch up again on Wednesday instead. He's busy tomorrow. Otherwise, it would happen tomorrow. Fitz, I'll invite you in for a chat with him then. And we'll have a chat. We'll have a chat with him about this because I know he's very much a man of principle and understands what that means. And he's lived a life, an immoral and moral life. Recently, in the most recent Brisbane floods, he credits God for saving him, and he figures he's paying him back right about now. So he's a great man, and I really looking forward to speaking to him again on Wednesday. And yes, we probably will wind up talking about Christian Mack, who resigned today from the Freedom Movement, for those of you who are unaware. Yes, there's more to that, but we'll talk about that at a different time. Fitz, let's get back into the show. I'll bring up the next slide. Living in the private uses a collection of codified law, immorality, to protect oneself from immorality. Here we have a perfect example of a complete lack of understanding of the principles of natural law. Using codified law as a strategy to freedom requires the three aspects of consciousness, thoughts, actions, and emotions, to be in contradiction to one another, which is the absolute antithesis of sovereignty. Living in the private perpetuates artificial construct of separation, which is in direct opposition to our shared responsibility to act as contributors to our shared fate on this planet.
Yeah, so that's a principle, right? If you understand that our fate is dependent on each other, you cannot just pull some people out and leave the rest behind. That's what he said about all the old people in the homes. What about people who have those disabilities, right? Who's going to look out for them? We're all part of one family, right? So we go to bat for all of us, not just some. And so that's, unfortunately, when you take that living in the private, you have separated from that capacity to actually connect in with the divineness of the all. And everyone is responsible for everyone. There is no one who gets out of this scot-free, right? And so if we don't take that responsibility and we don't show it with modeling, who else is going to be able to join in? We need to hold that line, and more of us start joining and making it go bigger, right?
Sure.
And if you don't use principle, how else are you going to find people to stand shoulder to shoulder with you? It's not going to happen. So this is about principle, right? And that's why I love what John does. He doesn't say it in those ways, but the signaling is exactly the same.
If groups claiming to practice common law were practicing what they preached, it would be self-evident in the level of cohesion between them, as principle does not discriminate nor favour. Have I read this already? Deeds are what create reality. You either stand for objective morality or you don't. Yes, I think we've done all that one. We ended up at controlled opposition. I understand. Yeah. We'll go to this one. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to his victims, and he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night, to undermine the pillars of a city. He infects the body politic so that he can no longer resist. A murderer is less to be feared. That's from Cicero.
So the one reason I put that there is we've got to start thinking about these people who are saying that they're working for for the people. Are they selling you a solution? First question, right? Do they stand on principle? How do you know? What are their actions? Their deeds will show you what they stand for. Can you test it against principle? Start looking at that. If they're not, there's highly likely they're an operative, guys. We need to start looking at what it is, right? Even though they'll swear black and blue, they're not. And if they, for some reason, aren't, and they're just doing it unwillingly, what's the outcome? Is it the same? So what does it really matter, right? How are we going to have that level of discernment if we don't use principle? This is the critical thing, guys. If we want peace, we need to understand that which is eternal and inextinguishable, and that only exists in one place, and that's principle, because it doesn't favor anyone.
Indeed. May I ask how many have successfully been able to use Magna Carta 1215 approach to stop paying rates and taxes?
So I just want to stop you there for a sec, Carl. This is the common thing that people come into the group that we've set up. They come in for self-indulgence. They want to know if they're going to get a win, right? This is the problem. This is what's stopping people. They go into it believing that the only reason they're going to go put any energy, effort behind something is that it has to guarantee them a win. This is the tragic nature of how people still think. What motivates them to do anything is they're only going to give if they're going to get something back for themselves, right? Now, I'm not saying you not to go into something because you want to have a go at it, but if that's your only motivator, right, you are contributing to the very pain and suffering that you're claiming to fight. And so when I saw that, I put this meme up and I asked this question. And what I got back was a self-indulgent answer. But this is the meme I put up.
Right, okay.
So it says, one who plants, can you bring that back up for a sec, Carl? Just so I can read it. The one who plants trees, knowing that he will never sit in their shade, has at least started to understand the meaning of life. Now, when I got the answer back, I got a self-indulgent answer. They didn't understand principle. That when we go into bat for something, it's for all people's well-being, not just our own, all of ours, because our well-being is dependent on everyone else's. So we don't do it because we want to get some instant reward. We do it because we stand on principle, because without principle, we have violence and chaos, and that's what we're living today. So you cannot use the same thinking that created the problem. And that question, can I get a win out of this? That's the same question, the same thinking that created the problem. And people are incapable of discerning the difference. And until they use principle, they won't be able to. So that's the point of this show, guys. How do we discern principle?
Okay. And let's play. Hang on. I'll bring that one down. Let's play this video.
Those of us who are resistant to the truth, we want there to be no consequences for the truth. That's our honest truth. The problem is that we live in a universe that is managed by the law of cause and effect. There is absolutely nothing in this universe that does not have a consequence, both positive and negative. So you can't prevent the effect of a cause. This means the most in alignment thing that you can do as a conscious creator is to choose your consequences consciously. If you don't choose them, they will simply happen to you.
That's very true. Life does tend to drag you along if you don't decide to make a decision or face the consequences.
Yeah, and that's that thing about not understanding cause and effect, right? The cause is the way you think about something. So, of course, they had to control how you think. And if people cannot see how they're being controlled, they're going to believe that they are in charge of their own decisions, and there's nothing you can do to convince them. That's how well it was played from day one. So that's what we went through all of these things tonight when they started setting up these myths, right, about the truth, about our reality, and then they got people to believe it. Once they believe there's a superior being, then they set themselves up to be controlled by external people who claim to be intercessories speaking for that higher authority. right? That was all very well understood how they had to do it. Just like Edward Bernays in the 50s was able to get women to start smoking,
Yeah.
and then they started the feminist movement and everything else after that. It's coming from the same energy.
All right, so we're up to the announcements portion of the evening.
Yep, that should be right.
Let's bring up this one first up.
So this is one we've done before, guys, but now that we've gone into morality and principles and stuff, I'm hoping to go back over it so you can understand it a bit deeper.
Okay, so at which point while you're being forced off the cliff do you draw the line and finally stand on principle? Not because you expect to win, but because you choose to defend that which is eternal and inextinguishable, upon which the very fabric of existence is built, therefore not up for negotiation. Do you want your last breath spent on submission to fear and comfort, or in defense of the universal principles of morality upon which our shared fate on this planet is dependent? The sooner more people understand that it's the compromise of morality for comfort that's got us to the precipice, the sooner our self-imposed suffering ends. To act in the service of morality is to bring freedom into reality. Collective adherence to universal principles of morality is the underlying force that dissolves fear, neutralizes evil, and cultivates freedom. Magna Carta.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that that meme is available for. I know I'm getting told off for saying that's a meme. That's available for people in the actual Telegram group, the Knowledge Center one. That they can share anytime they like. So sorry for cutting you off, Carl.
That's all right. We'll skip to the next one. Morality. Morality, knowing the objective difference between what is right and what is not. Magna Carta 1215 is the moral agreement that binds government to act in service of the people.
So this is about very few people. I know when I've asked people, can they define morality? They just couldn't do it. They couldn't do it in a way that was universally acceptable for others. So what it says, the difference between what is a right, not what's right, but a right. So to understand what a right is, very few people know what that is as well. And so I've made about a 7-minute video that incorporates this with common law, and it's available in the Knowledge Center group, guys. So if you wanted to share that with people, the feedback I'm getting is quite positive. It's a very simple language. I know that I don't speak simply, but I did my best to try and keep it as simple as I could. And so far I've been given some positive feedback about that. If you want to be able to share that with people that you believe could benefit from that, you can jump into the group. I did put in the live chat the Knowledge Center actual link there, Carl, so you can possibly put that up when you're ready as well.
Yeah, I've just thrown that in the chat. So
wonderful. So these are things you have access to in the group to actually start spreading the awareness of what's there, where people are going to be more open to be able to look into this stuff, because it's not coming from a place of anyone's opinion. I've also created this police conduct card. I think yep. So this is about just giving people more fuel about how to actually stand their ground. Now, one of the biggest mind tricks that you'll hear from people that actually teach common law, which is not common law, they'll teach you to ask this question. Am I, what is it? It's something about, do I have the right to stay silent? Right? So here they are asking someone that actually has no authority, right? They have never proven they have any, to be the adjudicator on what their rights are. Biggest mind trick on the planet. And that's what they're using as information about how to stand your ground as a sovereign living being. I mean, it's a contradiction right there. Why would you ask somebody who has no authority about what your rights are? Massive mind trick, guys. So we need to start questioning them on where their authority is. And if you have a look here, this goes to the heart of it, right? Because why do they even bother going to this public oath of office? Why do they even do that? If they're a private corporation, why would they even go and give that pomp and on that service? Because before they can graduate, they have to stick their hand on a Bible or some version of that and say an oath. Why do they bother? Yeah. Right? We've got to start drilling down on these things, guys. Then you go, why did you need to stand in front of people to recite an oath of office, right? Because is that not a public declaration? And if that's a public declaration, that only exists in one protocol, and that's under a system of service to the people. So you ask them, is that not correct? So you are now drilling down that they are a public servant. What does it mean? Right? So now you're asking them, an oath of office is a pledge to act in accordance with what? Something that's not your bias, something that's not your preference, not what your boss told you to do, but it's a universal principle of morality. Is that not the purpose of an oath? We need to understand what these things mean. And once we do, that's when we do what? We stand in our power. What is power? It's the activation of your knowledge. All right. So that was one of the questions that were in earlier tonight. So this is how we use our power, guys. We showed you a video a few weeks ago of someone doing that. And what happened? What was the outcome? That individual who had full armor, right? They had a bunch of other people that were fully armed at the beck and call. They could have just called upon anytime they wanted. But as soon as they were challenged under morality, they started panicking. That shows you how strong principles are, what they will disarm, guys. If we don't learn this, right, we're going to keep repeating our own pain. That's why I'm putting this up here. I'm giving you more and more resources. And so the next question that you would be asking is the fact that you swore an oath. Oh, sorry, Carl, if you can go back. In the presence of the public to act in accordance with objective morality means you are bound to uphold that oath at all times, does it not? See what happens when you ask that question, right? If you were solely an employee of a corporation, then there would be no requirement on you to take an oath of office to serve the people. Would that not be the case, right? So why, because we know they're employees of a corporation, so why do they go to the trouble of doing this oath stuff, right? That's got to mean something. That means they're still masking a system of service. Then the next one is, please explain how you can be employed by the police department, Vic. Now, we've created this for every single state, guys. So what we've done is we've added this to our caution card, and there's one for each state with the ABN. So it's all done for you guys. But I've just got the Victorian one here. So a foreign corporation incorporated in 1999, registered with Dun & Bradstreet, which is a credit reporting agency for corporations. How is that an honour of your oath of public office to act in service of the people at the same time as you're serving a corporation? Please explain that, right? And then it's, do you deny that the evidence that you are serving two masters is conclusive, making you guilty of the crime of duplicity? That's serious. Impersonating a constable, very serious. Malfeasance in public office, even more serious. Sedition, even more serious. Misprision of treason. It gets worse and worse for them, and treason, right? They can't stand in defense of any of these things. But if we don't start asking these questions, guys, they're not going to start shaking in their boots. And that's what we need to start getting to that place, right? If you want to do the last one, that's your choice. This is just where I stand. This is where I go past their egos. I go past their uniform. I go past any military outfit they're wearing, any weaponry. It goes past all. It goes straight into conscience. This is the one I love the most. Do you deny that the fact that you make a conscious choice to adorn the costume of a privately funded militia for financial gain is to be in open defiance of objective morality and the sworn oath you declared in public? So you are holding their feet to the fire, right? They can't deny any of these things. Therefore, an act of war against the very people you swore to protect, placing the burden of moral guilt from your conscious choices, because they're making them consciously, on you, which will haunt your soul for eternity. See what happens if you can get that one out.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder whether or not they'd understand it, some of them.
Well, it's really not the point, because if you got as far as those first three or four, I think they'd be panicking anyway. This is just something that I just have as my personal preference that I like to do.
Yes, I would agree 100%. Now, there is one final slide that I would like to bring up. It's a little different to the slide that you provided me, Fitz, but I think it means the same thing.
Oh, you changed it. All right, so this is a bit of a fun. We're going to have a little bit of fun to finish on, guys. This is something that my man crush, I'm just going to say it, has said publicly. LMTFA. I want to see if you guys can actually work out what it means, right? It's a very common expression. We say it to each other when we want to be in peace. What do you imagine that means? And see if anyone can work it out. But I love this. I found it.
Bear in mind, it is John Wilson we're talking about here, folks.
Exactly. So how does he speak, right?
Yeah. All right.
What could that possibly mean?
This is how Fitz originally put it up. as best campaign slogan ever. I find that very hard to disagree with. And that is, if you haven't figured it out yet, folks, the Leave Me the Fuck Alone party.
You tell me that's not standing on principle. Who doesn't want to be left in peace?
Yeah.
Right? That's all it's saying. I just need to live in peace without being violated in any kind of way. You know what I mean? This is what we're all after, right? So I love that. Not that I'm promoting parties in any way, shape, or form, unless you're going to throw like a celebration. But I just love that when he said that. Yeah, so
I do too.
I couldn't let that one go, guys.
Well, I'm looking forward to that John Wilson Wednesday with Fitz. That should be a very interesting chat.
So just before we go, guys, I did leave one more video where John actually says, he gets really riled up and he says, the armor of God, it's time to put on the armor of God. That's a really powerful video. If you understand armor of God as looking at the armor of using universal principle, right? If you understand that's what God means, then this is where we're all the same. There's no difference. And that's time for us to stand under principle. And that's why I love that video. So I'm not sure if you've got that one set up for us at all, Carl.
Yeah, here we go.
I want to say this about petitions, okay? I've been getting a lot of petitions recently, okay? People wanting me to sign a petition. Now, let me say, stop it. Stop sending me petitions, because I am not begging my political masters. I am not begging them for another couple of foot of chain. I am not doing it. I am not begging them to loosen the collar around my neck by a couple of notches. I want to expose them all. I want to expose them all and take them all down. I want them clean out. I want them out. The lot of them. The lot of them. There's an unholy alliance. There's an unholy alliance in this country between some evil parties, I can tell you. And you can't negotiate with evil. You've got to defeat it. You've got to defeat it. Now is the time. Now is the time to take off these bloody masks and put the full armour of God on. Yes. The full armour of God, and go to war. Yes. We go to war. We defeat them. They ain't going to give it to us. We're going to take it off them. We're going to take it off them. Put the full armour of God on and take it off them. Thank you.
Absolutely exceptional.
Absolutely. So I just couldn't resist that one, guys. I just needed to leave us on that one because he just says it all there. It's time to, really find our courage, where we are, our deepest truth, and stand up for it.
He's a very motivating man, and I count myself as honoured that he has my number and isn't afraid to pick up the phone and call me. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait. I'm sorry I mucked him around today. It was just unfortunate. I got delayed this morning, and otherwise we would have had a bit of a show this afternoon and a show tonight. But we'll do it Wednesday instead. So thanks, Fitz. Thanks again for another really great show. Lesson number 25. I think we're off next Monday, aren't we?
Yeah, so obviously it's going to be Boxing Day, so not really the most conducive to doing a show. Just wanted to question the question here that says, Sparrow, so you bag God, your scientism illusion is so crazy. So here we go, someone else in thought again. So just proving everything we've gone through today, there's some people who are going to be triggered by that and they cannot hold it, and then they have to jump in and espouse their opinion and create that illusion because it protects their beliefs, so they want to feel safe. This is perfect evidence of that. So thank you for that, Sparrow.
Let me just have a quick glance down. I did star a couple of comments earlier. Let me see what was in there. No, I think I got through all of those ones. So, all good. Just like to thank everybody who put in a super sticker tonight. Thank you very much for your support. It goes a long way, and it is deeply appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be off next week for Boxing Day night. There will be no Magna Carta lesson that night, but we will have one the following week. And we do have a Q&A coming up, Fitz. Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that'll be week 27. That should be January the 9th. Anyone who wants to ask a question, anything that you don't understand, or if you want to challenge anything, you're more than welcome. Please, the more questions, the better. Whatever it is that you want to challenge, please go ahead. I'd love to address anything that you've got that you want to put forward. This is your chance to actually have some say. Like Carl said, you can record it if you like, and we'll play a voice recording. I don't know if there's a capacity to bring everyone in live. I'm not sure if that's a thing. That would make it
for
a little bit more fun.
For really good questions, there is.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I can't do it for everyone, but I can for really good questions.
Yeah, so that'd be a fun thing. It's going to be unscripted. I don't know what I'm going to get, right? And I'm just going to be rolling in the moment and dealing with it as it comes. So if you want to be part of that, feel free to, whatever you don't understand or whatever you'd like to challenge, please come forward. I welcome it all, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Good on you, buddy. Thanks again. Talk to you next week.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I will obviously probably next week, but maybe on Wednesday if we can get to hook up with John Wilson, that'd be awesome.
Oh, that's right. True. Yes, we'll definitely be talking before Christmas. So, yes, Mr. Wilson on Wednesday. Looking forward to it. Thanks, mate.
All right, it's a pleasure. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much, folks, for coming in for week number 25 in our Magna Carta Learning Centre. There has been a lot happening today, and unfortunately, I've had one of those busy kind of days where I've been running around like the proverbial blue fly with his ass hanging out, and have achieved certain things, but not nearly enough, unfortunately. So if you aren't already aware of it, early this morning, Christian Mack decided to resign from the Freedom Movement. If you are a regular follower of mine, you will have heard me have called him to resign as the best thing he could do for the Freedom Movement. I've called on him to do that 2 or 3 times recently. Well, in the not so recent past, about a month back. I think John had more to do with this than I did, for sure. He named him and a couple of others that are in the movement that certainly are maybe doing less good for the movement than they possibly think they are. Watch this space, I think, is about all we can say on that one at the moment. Very, very intriguing. I'll have more to say about it in the next few days, and I'm sure John is going to have a lot more to say about it when we catch up on Wednesday. It's going to be an interesting day tomorrow too, folks. Starlink did well, Sunflower. Thank you very much. It seems to be working. I've spent most of the weekend trying to figure out where to put it so that it sees the right portion of the sky at the right time so that it gets a signal. But it does seem to work. That's very good. Also, I've had our new broadcast TV gear turn up, and there's still a couple of little pieces that need to be installed or actually purchased before I can install it all or plug it all in and make it all work. But the plan is that at some stage over the next day or two, we'll stick all that together and start making it work. And obviously the plan for next year is to take all of that gear to your place. The Galactic Larrikins are very keen to get on the road. I mean, they do live in Canberra, so who can blame them? But they're very keen to get on the road, and so am I. We're going to get this gear out. We're going to come and build my places at your place. If that's what you'd like to be part of, then please get a hold of Cherie at vofhq.com. We are still working on our membership thing, and we hope to have a little bit of news for you in the next day or two about that. In fact, Vince has probably got all the news on that already, and I just haven't spoken to him because of the situation I found myself in. But anyway, we're busy. In the lead up to Christmas, so is everybody else, so I don't want to distract you too much from your Christmas shopping and all those great things that you've got to be doing in the week before Christmas. So, folks, thank you very much for your support, for your love, for your generosity, for your stickers, and for following the Voice of Freedom. This week, going to have some interesting stuff. In fact, tomorrow I'll be posting up a video of me creating something I will be making a water filter. Yes, there is a drill. There is other tools, mechanical instruments, and there is a first aid kit involved. I'll just leave it at that. It's hardly surprising. It is me, but there you go. Anyway, well, I'll post that one up tomorrow, give you a bit of a look, and John Wilson Wednesday. Looking forward to that too. Have a great night, folks, and we'll talk to you soon.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!